Hey, what's going on, AP peeps? We have APUSH review, Wilson's 14 points in the Treaty of Versailles, a little post-World War I action for you today. So let's get going. Okay, so let's talk about the two goals of Wilson and World War I. And you see him here speaking in front of Congress. He said that World War I would be a war to end wars. In other words, as a result of this war, there should never be another war again. He was slightly off on that. And two, he said the United States should get involved in the war to make the world safe for democracy. And you're going to see that he's going to push this idea that other countries should be able to vote for whom they want. However, unfortunately for Woodrow Wilson, the U.S. and Europe had different views for post-World War I Europe. Okay, so Wilson issued something called the 14 points, and there are, believe it or not, 14 of them, but we're only going to cover about 5 or 6 of the really big important ones. He delivers this to Congress in 1918 as the war is wrapping up, and the first point is open covenants of peace, openly arrived at, after which there shall be no private international understandings of any kind, but diplomacy shall proceed always frank and in the public view. Well, what's he talking about here? We notice words like open covenants, diplomacy, and public view. So what he's really saying is get rid of those secret alliances that helped cause World War I. So no secret alliances between countries. The second point says absolute freedom of navigation of the seas outside territorial waters, alike in peace and in war, except as the seas may be closed in whole or in part by international action for the enforcement of international covenants. You see here freedom of navigation of the seas. In other words, get rid of this. Make sure there's no unrestricted submarine warfare, which is something that the Germans practiced, which ultimately brought the United States into World War I. Let's go to the third point. The removal of all economic barriers and the establishment of equality of trade conditions among all the nations consenting to the peace and associating themselves for its maintenance. Removal of all economic barriers means free trade and no tariffs. And we'll see the U.S. does not follow this policy in the late 1920s, early 1930s. Remember, Woodrow Wilson was a Democrat, and Democrats want to decrease tariffs. Remember, Democrats down, Democrats decrease tariffs, DD. Conversely, Republicans want to raise RR. The fourth point is adequate guarantees given and taken that national armaments will be reduced to the lowest point consistent with domestic safety. We see national armaments will be reduced. That simply means reducing militarism or building up of your military. And that was another large cause of World War I. All right, the fifth point, a free, open-minded, and absolutely impartial adjustment of all colonial claims based upon a strict observance of the principle that in determining all such questions of sovereignty, the interests of the populations concerned must have equal weight with the equitable claims of the government whose title is to be determined. We see sovereignty and population. Sovereignty is the ability to decide your own government or be able to vote. So he is saying that countries should reduce imperialism and allow for something called self-determination. Self-determination is a very important term to know. It is the ability for people to determine their own forms of government. And this is a big point that Europe did not agree with. They did not want to give up their overseas colonies. And finally, the 14th point, a general association of nations must be formed under specific covenants for the purpose of affording mutual guarantees of political independence and territorial integrity to great and small states alike. We see association of nations and territorial integrity. This is a prelude to the League of Nations, which does not work in the long run, but this is Wilson's baby. Okay, let's go to the conference at Versailles. At the end of World War I, both Germany and Russia were excluded. The US, France, Great Britain, and Italy each had their own goals, and here are the big four that are meeting there. Article 10 or Article X of the Treaty of Versailles created the League of Nations, and this will be hated by Congress, as we will see. Article 231 is the War Guilt Clause, which stated that Germany must accept full responsibility for World War I, and this is going to create a lot of resentment in Germany and ultimately help contribute to the rise of Adolf Hitler. Some European countries gained self-determination, but not imperialized countries in Africa and Asia. So you see this idea of self-determination really only benefited certain countries in Europe, not the overseas colonies in Africa and Asia. Okay, we're going to go to the Lodge reservations. And we need to introduce you to Henry Cabot Lodge, who is a Republican senator, and he was against the treaty. He was best friends with Teddy Roosevelt. He wrote 14 reservations. So, in response to Wilson's 14 points, Lodge wrote 14 reservations. His and many other Congresspeople's big beef with the Treaty of Versailles was Article 10 or Article X. This would get the U.S. involved in foreign entanglements and ultimately could possibly get them involved in war. And remember that Congress is ultimately the ones who decide to declare war. And that's what upset a lot of Congress people. So this would take the war making decision out of Congress's hands. Wilson goes on a speaking tour across the country to try to sell the Treaty of Versailles to America, and then many Congress people follow him, particularly Republicans that are against the Treaty of Versailles, and give their own speaking tours. And these people were called irreconcilables, and they followed his tour, giving their own versions. And ultimately, the Senate never ratifies the Treaty of Versailles. So all that work that Wilson put into the treaty, the U.S. never ratified it. And you see his political cartoon about the League of Nations. It says this League of Nations bridge was designed by the President of the United States of America. And you'll notice right in the middle, it's missing the piece over here that Uncle Sam is on the USA. So ultimately, this bridge will collapse. And the reason why is because the United States never joins the League of Nations and ultimately never ratifies the Treaty of Versailles. All right, that's everything you need to know about Wilson's 14 points and the Treaty of Versailles. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you have not already, please subscribe to my channel. If you found this video helpful, please give a thumbs up on the like button below. If you could take a moment and post this to Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, any social media outlet to help me spread the word, I would greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. Thank you very much for watching and have a good day, guys.